Welcome back. We're so happy to have you here with us on Georgia Detours. I'm Dominique Times, and today we're taking you to see visionary folk art in some pretty unexpected parts of the state. Howard Finster and Eddie Owens Martin are two famous artists who lived right here in Georgia, and both created art displays that span across acres of land. Let's join Allie Hill in Summerville, Georgia to learn more about Paradise Gardens.
What do a Baptist preacher, a rock album cover designer, and a folk artist who created over 45,000 works of art have in common? Well, they would all be accurate descriptions of Howard Finster. And today, we're at his Summerville property, Paradise Gardens, to explore more about him and what went into this expansive property.
Howard Finster, as you can see, was no ordinary man. He spent most of his years as a Baptist preacher and bicycle repairman. But it's what he did during the last 30 years of his life that have turned him into a Georgia figure and garnered him international recognition. Tina Cox, the executive director of Paradise Gardens Preservation Society, gave us an inside look in the gardens and into Finster.
Welcome to Howard's Paradise. Over the years, he did 46,000 pieces of art. He is in just about every museum in the United States. He built Paradise Garden, which is his huge legacy that he has left behind. And can you imagine starting all of that at the age of 59 years old?
When I'm not here, well, people come along and see me. It's hard to keep stuff up like that out in the weather.
Served close to 1,000 people in funerals and weddings.
Yeah.
Unknown number of baptisms. Pastored 9 churches. And at this point, you've done 1,464 paintings between 1976 and 1979. How many paintings have you done by this time?
I'm on 2007 right now.
Well, let's go in this garden and see some more of this vision.
Howard really was charismatic. He attracted so many people from all walks of life. He had an ability to be able to look straight at you and really give you his full attention. He had a piercing way about him of connecting to you. His age went away. And it was amazing because you can ask anyone who collects Howard Finster, who really knew him as a person, they would all say the same thing, that he was just really full of love, and they felt that. He was so flexible. He was just a flexible personality, and he really was a magnet and just really pulled you in, and you were able to connect with him no matter what age, no matter what race, no matter what country you were from. You were able to, and he was able to connect with you.
I'm hoping someday that every nation in the world can put a monument in here representing their country. You know. So I made this one up and sung it in the Library of Congress in a private interview. It's just a little tack and a shingle of your roof.
So when Howard was 59 years old, and keep in mind he's been a minister for a number of years, he had seen a vision. He had some paint on the end of his index finger, and he looked at it and he saw a face in it.
So I just tucked this finger here and dipped it down in paint and started patching on this bicycle. And I dipped in to get some more paint, and I looked to see if I had enough paint on my finger. And when I did, there was a face on my finger. Can you see that finger right there that face is on? Well, that's what happened. I dipped this finger in paint and come up with it, and there's a face on that finger right there.
And he had a vision that said, paint sacred art. He collected a lot of materials. Keep in mind, he's a Depression child. So everything was repurposed. Everything had a second and a third life.
Like he's buried. Right here. See, that's a bearing for a boxcar wheel.
Mm-hmm.
The old winches
Mhm.
and things they used to use. That's what this garden's about.
Mhm.
He had so many people visiting him all the time, day and night. And then he taught classes, he taught workshops. He was a champion of all artists. He believed that everybody could be who they wanted to be. Everybody could be an artist.
Marching in when the saints go marching in.
You know, Howard really became friends with so many people over the years, musicians, other artists. Many artists flocked here to work with Howard and be inspired by Howard. Early on, Howard really gravitated to the music scene, and a lot of the young people from the Athens area came over to help with the folk art church. And Michael Stipe came over to help build and work on that. So the relationship was born. Then you end up with a video in Paradise Garden, and then boom, MTV was born. And the next thing you know, REM has video ready to go for MTV. Howard did the Talking Heads album cover, Little Creatures, and won Rolling Stone's album cover of the year for that. So there was a huge legacy that was really building along with just Howard getting his word out. I mean, number one, Howard was a preacher. He would work to 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. And so he really was driven, and which is amazing that he was able to accomplish, over 46,000 pieces, and also putting together Paradise Garden as we see it. And it's amazing because we have a staff of 4. We can barely keep up. I could not imagine trying to keep up and build all of this and create all of this just by yourself.
And I enjoy the garden myself, but where you work in a garden for 24 years, building it down on your knees and in the mud half of the time and everything else. And when we started this garden, it was a lake here in the 1800s. Doctors come here on rowboats and hunted ducks. And it's just filled in and filled in. And when I got here, this 24 years I've been here, I filled it in.
We have 2.5 acres, a little over 2.5 acres in Paradise Garden. It's filled full of all original artwork, the mosaic garden and many feet of mosaic sidewalks, and also the several entrances. We've got beautiful walls still in great condition, and we've got the rolling chair ramp and a number of other things. In 2017, we've had 6,161 visitors from 33 countries. So Howard is still with us today. His legacy is with us. His spirit is really with us. Did he have any idea how much he really was going to move the world and the world outside of Pennville and Somerville and Chattooga County? No, nobody had any idea. It's been amazing.
Sun refused to shine, oh, when the sun refused to shine, thought I want to be in that number.
Someone so kind, someone so full of love, someone in this day and time that still is with us and still has a legacy with us, created this. You can walk through any time of day and night, any kind of weather, sunshine, cloudy day. You can always see something new and interesting. You can come back 50 times and you can discover something different.
Paradise Gardens was the home and workplace of Howard Finster, but that isn't where his influence ends. We traveled to Atlanta to stop in at the High Museum and talk with the curator of folk art, Catherine Jenelson. She was able to explain a little more.
Folk art and self-taught art, and especially artist environments like Paradise Garden, are a global phenomenon for sure. I mean, you can be anywhere in the world and you will be somewhat near an incredible place like Paradise Garden, because I think this impulse to recreate the world and to have a voice is universal. What makes it unique in the South is oftentimes its engagement with religion or civil rights. Not so much the case with Finster's work, but what you see in the work of self-taught artists across the South are people who were marginalized by society, whether it was due to their belief system, the color of their skin, their class, finding their voice and finding their platform through their art, whether it was a display that they made in their yard or something that they did in their house. And it's very, very powerful in the South. In the 90s, there was a lot going on at the Garden. Howard Finster's health was starting to fail. He was starting to think about the future. He wasn't going to be able to work on the Garden forever, certainly not at the clip that he'd been working on it for the past few decades. And so, he built this site and this incredible art environment on a swamp. So there's the kind of need for constant maintenance, lest the works really actually fall underwater. It felt like there was a need to think about how works could exist beyond the Garden. So the High Museum, recognizing Howard Finster's impact as a Southern artist and the way that he'd influenced so many musical artists, visual artists, performing artists in the region as well as internationally, they felt like this was a commitment that we needed as an institution to make to this incredibly important artist from our home state, from our region. So the Paradise Project resulted in the High's acquisition of about 50 works of art from the Garden, and they range from cement sidewalk slabs, which are very important, one in which Howard is marking his passing into the artist world when he put down his tools and took up the yoke of being a sacred artist. So everything from these concrete sidewalk slabs and sculptures, Calf and the Lion and the Baby on the Cockatrix's Den, to painting, to really, really early work that most people don't even know about, like early church signs that he did before he even had his calling as a sacred artist. One thing I'm really interested in is that before Paradise Garden was Paradise Garden, Howard was really invested in creating a museum that honored all of the inventions of mankind. And so we have a few of those displays that he made for that museum, so objects that he felt were really an important record of the achievements of mankind, and for which he constructed these handmade shelves. And he made hundreds of those, but we have a few of them in the collections. I think it's a really unique energy, and I think you can see how it manifests, especially in our educational programs. Howard obviously had very ardent religious beliefs that don't resonate with every person, but as an artist was working in ways that transcend, in a lot of ways, what his specific religious mission was, the way that he reused material, the way that he embraced the kind of resilience of man, the way that he was a storyteller, like all of those things really manifest in the way that we're able to celebrate him with young audiences. When he had his vision and committed himself to being a sacred artist and to putting his sermons out in paint, to his mind, the combination of text and image had to do with the effectiveness of pictures, of images. Because of course he'd been preaching for decades, but he found that words didn't always resonate with people. They didn't stick with them the same way that pictures and images did. He kind of crossed over into this artist world and embraced the power of the image, but in a way his kind of penchant for narrative as a Southern preacher never really left, and so he did both. He combined his sermons in text with his sermons in paint and image to create these kind of wonderful hybrid compositions where there's just so much going on. One of the things that I especially love about Finster's example, and which can be said for most of the self-taught artists in our collection, if not all of them, is that they really demonstrate to audiences of all generations that there's like no single way to become an artist. There's so many different paths that one can take. If you have the passion, if you have the will, you can create an artistic future for yourself. The acquisition that we made with the Paradise Project was really wide-ranging. It tried to capture all of the ways that Howard's brilliance manifested, because he was much more than just a sculptor, just a painter. He was a maker across a really wide spectrum of things. One of the great regrets of my life so far And maybe it will be forever that I never got to meet him, but I feel like I know him. All of the incredible testimonies that I've gotten from his friends, many of whom are still alive and love to recount their tales of what it was like to be with Howard at the Garden. We're still trying to wrap our heads around you, Howard, and we haven't gotten there yet, I think, as people or as an art world. He was so complex, he gave so much, and I just look forward to the years ahead of continuing to explore and uncover what was at the heart of his artistic project.
Can you imagine hearing him play music or speak in the garden? It must have been quite an experience. By the way, a little bird told me the Preservation Society has an Airbnb with exclusive access to the garden. Maybe worth checking out sometime. But right now, we'll head over to another location filled with intriguing work created by a rather eccentric artist. Let's meet back up with Allie Hill at Pasaquan.
I've got to show you guys this place. We're here at the House of St. Ohm, where visionary art is literally everywhere. You can even take it home with you. Let's check it out.
Hello there, all you people. This is Marion County, and Buena Vista is the county seat, and I'm Eddie Martin that lives here. I created and drawed and sculptured and built walls and everything. And within my heart, I always had a hope that my dream would ring, and it's rung so true.
Eddie Owens Martin, or St. Ohm, was a small-town kid whose vision far exceeded the limits of this world. After spending time in New York as a teenager doing a number of odd jobs, he returned home to the family farm in Buena Vista, and it was there that he built Pasaquan. This art environment is a combination of influences from many different religions and nations, with each corner telling a little more about the artist himself.
People's immediate response to him was people were taken aback by his appearance and his persona.
A remarkable man named Eddie Owens Martin, St. Ohm, built this place. He wanted just his own little utopia, and it happens to be Pasaquan.
Well, he was born here in Marion County in 1908 in a house a few miles from here. There was a sharecropping family, and at a certain point in time, they moved a few miles from his birthplace to this very site. Eddie went to New York when he was a teenager, learned to tell fortunes and visited museums, and eventually in the mid-50s came back here. Then in 1955, his mother died about that time, and he came back permanently and started building Pasaquan.
I have to do this, and I want to tell you, world out there, that I'm a creative person, and it's getting to begin to destroy me. I must find some way, somehow, some help.
When he was a young man in New York, he became very, very ill at some point in time and had a high fever. During that high fever, he had a vision. These characters came to him in this vision and told him to come back home and to start building this place that would be a place where all the arts were appreciated, where there were no boundaries in terms of gender and race and class and all that stuff. He wanted a place of harmony where arts were appreciated and people got along.
He built this place because he had these visions in 1935 that told him he needs to make a home for these Pasaquanians. He needs to change his ways. Before he became a fortune teller, he was a prostitute, you know. So it was like this guy is turning himself into a saint and then living this life of expressing some kind of like coexistence of everybody, you know. In the book, In the Land of Pasaquan by Tom Patterson, he says that he was working the farm, working on the land, and he gets sick, so sick that he thinks he's going to die, and then he's visited by an 8-foot-tall Pasaquanian with the arms the size of watermelons, and the Pasaquanian tells him that he needs to change his ways or he's done. So what does the dying man do? He decides he's going to change his ways. And then he changes his occupation from midnight cowboy type hustler to a street fortune teller. And then he starts to get into art. He's going to museums and libraries. He's researching different tribes from all over the world and putting all what he thought were the best ideals in one place.
And when it comes right down to it, what it represents in essence is his vision of what the future would be like. So everything that you see when you come here is in the future. It's not of now.
He wanted this place for everyone to feel welcome, everyone to feel like they belong. And I think at the same time, I think he wanted a place for himself to feel like he belongs.
He kind of built his own little enclosure here. There are walls around the place, or at least in the front part of the place. I think he was building his own world here, a world that he liked a lot better apparently than he did the larger world outside this place. And I think that was a large part of his thinking, that anything worth having was worth the effort that you had to put into it.
Absolutely planned every bit of it and executed almost all of it. But he would, for instance, hire an electrician to come out and do some electrical work, or he hired young guys in the community to come out and sort of paint by number. He would score the concrete and tell them paint that yellow, paint that red. There was a good bit of local labor very much under his supervision.
St. Ohm paid homage to a variety of religions at Pasaquan, but describing his personal beliefs wasn't as simple.
Somebody said one time that when Eddie got religion, he got them all. And you'll certainly see symbology from a lot of different religions and cultures out there. You'll see Stars of David, you'll see Christian crosses, you'll see things that look Mexican, you'll see things that look Indian, you'll see things that look Native American. I don't think he had one specific religion. He was interested in lots of religions.
Well, he was religious, but he was a religion of one.
And I'm a person that's going on in years of age. But if I had known these rituals in the beginning, this age and discrepancy would not be on me.
Well, I first met him when I was a teenager. I came here to get my fortune read. There are lots of local stories about him, stories about certain powers that he possessed in the eyes of the local people that you'll hear different versions of the same story. One is that he had this cadre of trained rattlesnakes that were around the grounds here, and that if anybody started messing with him in a bad way, he could make these sounds, and these snakes would come up out of the woods to protect him.
Pasaquan to me so far has just been just a big inspiration. I mean, when I hear the story of this guy who had a vision and made it all come true on his own terms. I liked his inclusive message. I like that the Pasaquans are from the future, and so far in the future that mankind has sort of reverted to a tribal state. And I liked sort of his mission statement. He felt like the world was in a very dark place. He lived through World War I, or was around it, the Great Depression, especially in New York. He saw that the Ku Klux Klan was running rampant. Being homosexual himself, he felt bigotry towards his sexual orientation, and he was just like, man, this world is a dark place. So to save mankind, we need to preserve some of the best ideals from the past to then bring to the future.
Personally, he felt neglected. He thought that his genius wasn't recognized by the larger world of art. Once when I came down to talk to him about his work and maybe using some of it in an exhibit, we were out by the dance circle, which is out on the grounds here, and I was recording him, and he started singing, and he could sing in this kind of extemporaneous bluesy way, and he sang this song that lasted maybe 3 minutes. Basically about the inequities of the art world and how his genius wasn't recognized, and it went on and on and on. And I was a curator at the museum in Columbus at the time, and when he got through, he said, "Now go play that for those big wigs up there in Columbus."
searching and looking for what would turn me on. Oh, there's all kind of people in this town. Weary freaks are walking all around.
For fear of the property's decay, the Passaquan Preservation Society was created. Together with the Kohler Foundation, they restored Passaquan, and it is now open to the public.
So most folks, when they come out here, they say they feel happy. They feel like some, I wouldn't say a weight has been lifted off them, but there's like a temporary moment where they just feel joy. Or maybe it's the sense of awe to see that this one guy had his vision and made all of this come true by any means possible. If you love art and you love driven people or an interesting story, Passaquan's a place to check out.
And it's for you, and you, and you, my friend out there, that sits in that chair or that lounge, or he may be leaning against the wall in despair, or maybe perhaps to meet a friend. You can tell by the posture how it's all going to end.
I think he'd be amazed. He would be really pleased too. Finally, it's happening.
Passaquan looks amazing, and I'm fascinated by the parallels between Finster and Martin. They were both so unhappy with the world and attempted to change it in their own artistic ways. Whether we agree with their message or not, we've got to admit, amassing a 46,000-piece collection and creating a 7-acre display are incredible artistic accomplishments. Both men are certainly thought-provoking and make great conversation starters, something you can always find here on Georgia Detours. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm off to book that Airbnb, but hope to see you soon.